It's kind of curious if one thinks about the history of the way portraiture works. It was a good thing to happen if you were a king and you were choosing a wife. But it does portray a particular period and a particular way of thinking. And that's probably more interesting than the likeness.
I very much involved myself with painting figures. I'm very interested in the head as a subject and the way that faces describe our emotions. But I would say I'm not necessarily interested so much in a particular person. I'm not trying to make a portrait, but I am trying to make a painting of what it feels like to be human. Why I use brushstrokes or the lines in my drawings so expressively is because I'm trying to describe what's going on inside the head, not just outside. I'm trying to give somebody a face to look at which is full of emotion, which is so full of emotion that it's just pouring out and swirling around and creating these dynamic brushstrokes and marks. And so the lines have to feel like they're sweeping around the sides of this object as well. It gives it volume, as if this bag of skin that we're covered in can't quite control or can't quite keep in all of the emotions that are inside.
They're sort of fictional portraiture, I suppose, in that sense, imaginary or fictional portrait, because the person behind it doesn't really exist, although it did come from found in images. Although I'm actually using faces, they're not portraiture because I'm not really portraying anyone in particular. I think the physicality of these paintings are quite important. It's almost like a sort of billboard. Or cinema screen size. It helps to remove that particular image out of a sort of creation portrait. Again, it's not something you read into. It becomes an object, large object that kind of almost confronts you.
What's being portrayed there, which is more than just the image, the way the child has been posed. In some respect, portraiture's like that, something that's expected because it's doing a particular job. I'm very against the notion that an artist waits for an idea. I think that things happen in the process of making. When you try and put different concerns together, there may be a way in which something becomes apparent. It may not work out this time, but they remember, and it works out. There will be a time when they can use that. If you have the courage to go with it, you may find that you're doing your most interesting work.
I've said frequently that I see myself as Dr. Frankenstein, cutting up bits of art history and putting them back together, but hopefully putting them back together in a way which is relevant to the 21st century. Back in the old days, I would use photocopies and I would cut things up and collage things together, and I would use the photocopier to sort of elongate and stretch things, and you could move things whilst it was copying. Because I've always been very interested in the idea of reproduction. Because we live in this artificial world that's created this artificial brain that we have, I make images or paintings that are conglomerations of other artists' work. I think it's absolutely relevant. I think it's the way we communicate with each other.
Quite often the initial reactions from people are like, are they airbrushed, particularly the sort of skin. from beginning to the end, it would take about 4 months. I'm not working on them all the time, basically all on canvas, so I have to wait about 4 days in between each layers, and they're really thin. I do 3 layers of wet and wet, which is like, I call them foundation, literally like a foundation as in makeup. So you build structures of the whole thing in normal sort of consistencies of paint. And then after that, once that's dried, they've just become literally like a glaze. So that's why it takes long, I have to wait. And so I tend to rotate paintings because you can't just work on one painting for 4 months.
I will use elements in the work which I've used before. I know what they can do. They are constantly surprising me that they're doing something other or something extra. I just have to remain receptive enough to be able to see that. But what you're really interested in is the things that you don't know. If you look at something which is foreign, that's not reassuring, because it's foreign. You don't understand it. But it could be incredibly intriguing. It may be that the best art is always foreign. The best art actually challenges you to question your position as opposed to what you're seeing. And is a little bit scary because it might undermine what you believe yourself.